NBA story nobody saw coming. What if I told you that the player everyone said was too small, too limited, and simply not built to carry a franchise, just forced the entire basketball world to eat their words? No excuse, no trash talk, no victory lap, just a championship ring. Because what happened to Jalen Brunson might be one of the coldest revenge stories the NBA has ever witnessed. For years, people looked at him and saw limitations. Too short, too ordinary, not athletic enough, not superstar material. Then one of the biggest names in basketball publicly said what millions of doubters had been thinking all along. He too small. 3 words. 3 words that followed Brunson everywhere. Every playoff game, every highlight, every clutch shot, every conversation about whether the New York Knicks could ever become champions again. According to the critics, Brunson wasn't that guy. He couldn't be the #1 option. He couldn't lead a team to the promised land. History wasn't on his side. The experts had already written the ending to his story. But here's the problem with writing someone else's ending. Sometimes the main character decides to rewrite the script. Because while the camera's focused on the headlines, the debates, and the endless criticism, Brunson stayed silent. He didn't jump on social media. He didn't start a podcast. He didn't fire back during interviews. Instead, he went to work. And somewhere along the way, doubt turned into fuel. Every disrespectful comment became motivation. Every prediction became another receipt. Every he can't slowly transformed into what if he actually does. Then came the playoffs, then came the pressure, then came the biggest stage imaginable. And by the time the dust settled, the same man they called too small was standing at center court with the Larry O'Brien trophy in his hand. The critics had gone quiet. The doubters had changed their tune. Some even apologized publicly. Others refused to admit they were wrong. But none of that mattered anymore. Because Jalen Brunson had already delivered the only response that truly counts in sports, he won. And trust me, the deeper we dig into this story, the crazier it gets. Because this isn't just about basketball. It's about disrespect. It's about proving people wrong. It's about how one overlooked star transformed criticism into greatness while the entire world watched. Before we dive in, I want to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below and represent your hometown. And here's a quick challenge. If you believed in Brunson before everyone else, press 1 inch the comments. If you honestly thought he was too small to win it all, press 2. No judgment. Keep it real. And if you're new here and love NBA stories filled with drama, receipts, and unforgettable moments, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what happened next changed the entire narrative around Jalen Brunson forever. The 3 words that started everything. To understand why this story exploded, you have to go back to the moment the disrespect became public. Not whispered, not rumored, not hidden behind anonymous league sources, public. On camera. In front of millions, the New York Knicks were still trying to convince the basketball world they were serious. They had talent. They had defense. They had Madison Square Garden shaking again, but there was still one question hanging over the entire franchise. Did they have a real #1? Did they have the kind of superstar who could close a playoff series, survive the finals, and look another elite team in the eye without blinking? That was the question. And then Becky Hammon answered it in the harshest way possible. She looked at the Knicks and basically said they did not have that dude. When Jalen Brunson's name came up, the answer was even colder. He too small. That was the line. Simple. Brutal. Unforgettable. And the reason it hit so hard is because it was not just about basketball skill. It sounded like a final judgment on who Brunson was allowed to become. Not fast enough. Not tall enough. Not built like LeBron. Not explosive like Anthony Edwards. Not physically overwhelming like Giannis. Not a 6'8" wing who can see over every defense. Just a short guard trying to carry New York on his back. And in the modern NBA, that is the easiest player archetype to doubt. Because history gives people an argument. Allen Iverson was an icon, but he never won the title as the #1 guy. Steve Nash won MVPs, but never broke through to the finals. John Stockton became a legend, but never got the ring. So when Becky said what she said, she was not completely inventing the idea from nothing. But the problem was the tone. The problem was the certainty. The problem was making it sound like Brunson's ceiling had already been measured before he even got the chance to touch it. That is where fans got angry, because Brunson was not some random role player asking for superstar respect. He was already carrying the Knicks through pressure. He was already making clutch shots. He was already turning New York from a loud basketball city into a dangerous basketball team. But instead of getting respect, he got reduced to one thing: his height. And that is when the story stopped being only about the Knicks. It became personal because every underdog watching knew exactly what that felt like, being told you are not the right size, not the right type, not the right name, not the right face of a franchise. And the wildest part, Brunson heard all of it. He just did not answer. Not yet. When Draymond entered the conversation, then Draymond Green stepped into the story. And suddenly, this was no longer just one analyst questioning Jalen Brunson. Now it felt bigger. Because Draymond is not some quiet voice in the corner. He is a champion. He is loud. He is respected. He is also one of the most fearless talkers the NBA has ever seen. And when he suggested that Brunson was not built like a true number one option, it added another layer to the disrespect. Draymond looked at the Knicks and saw a team that was good, but not great enough. He saw Brunson as dangerous, but not championship level dangerous. He saw New York's rise and basically said, enjoy the moment now, because this is not built to last. That is the kind of comment that sticks. Because when fans say it, players can ignore it. When random accounts say it online, players can laugh it off. But when a four-time champion says it, the words hit different. Now, Brunson was not just fighting against Becky Hammon's too small label, he was fighting against an entire basketball theory. The theory that small guards can shine, but not carry. They can score, but not finish the mission. They can inspire a city, but not lift the trophy. And Brunson still said nothing. No angry interview, no dramatic response, no personal attack, just silence. But silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes silence is where the fire starts. And for Brunson, every word became a receipt. Every doubt became a quiet reminder. Every debate show became another reason to stay locked in. The world wanted him to talk. He chose to work, and that decision changed everything. The silent fuel, the most dangerous version of an athlete, is not always the louder. Sometimes it is the one who hears everything, remembers everything, and never lets the world know how much it mattered. That was Jalen Brunson. On the outside, he looked calm. He answered questions with control. He never gave reporters the angry headline they wanted. He never made Becky Hammon the center of his story. He never turned Draymond Green into a personal enemy. But behind the scenes, something was building. Because great players do not need disrespect to become great, but when disrespect comes, they know exactly how to use it. Brunson used it in the gym. He used it in film sessions. He used it when defenses trapped him. He used it when taller players switched onto him and thought they could bother his shot. Every time someone said he was too small, Brunson played bigger. Not by jumping higher, not by suddenly becoming someone else, but by mastering what he already had: footwork, balance, patience, angles, timing, touch, leadership. That is what made his rise so scary. He was not trying to prove he could become a different player. He was proving that the player he already was could win at the highest level. And that is what the critics missed. They judged him by how he looked standing next to giants. But basketball is not played on paper. It is played in moment, in fourth quarters, in hostile arenas, in possessions where everyone knows who is getting the ball and nobody can stop it anyway. That is where Brunson became different. That is where doubt started turning into fear. New York started believing, at first, people treated the Knicks like a nice story. A tough team, a loud crowd, a fun playoff run, but not a real championship threat. That changed when Jalen Brunson started taking control of games like he owned every inch of the floor. Madison Square Garden felt alive again. Not just loud, alive. Every Brunson bucket felt personal. Every step-back jumper felt like a message. Every fourth-quarter drive felt like New York was slowly waking up from a decades-long nightmare. This was not just a team trying to win game. This was a city trying to believe again. And Brunson became the face of that belief. He was not the tallest star. He was not the flashiest athlete. He did not move like he was created in a basketball laboratory. But he had something New York respects more than all of that: toughness. He played through pressure like it was normal. He handled traps without panic. He absorbed contact without complaining. He walked into arenas where everyone expected him to collapse, and he kept making the right play. That is when the tone around the league began to shift. The same people who once asked if Brunson was good enough started asking if he was unstoppable. The same critics who called the Knicks limited started wondering if their limits were imaginary. And the scariest part, Brunson was not forcing it. He was not chasing revenge highlight. He was simply controlling the game, quietly, precisely, coldly. And with every win, the old quotes got heavier. Because the closer New York moved toward the finals, the more uncomfortable those old takes became. Too small? Not a real number one? Can't lead a team? Suddenly, those words did not sound like analysis anymore. They sounded like evidence waiting to be destroyed. The finals changed everything. Then came the stage that was supposed to expose him. The NBA Finals, no hiding, no soft matchups, no easy headline. This was where legends are confirmed and frauds get revealed. For the critics, this was supposed to be the moment the old argument finally won. The moment Brunson's size became a problem. The moment New York's dream crashed into reality. Instead, Brunson turned the finals into his courtroom, and every possession became testimony. He attacked switches. He punished mistakes. He hit shots when the arena got tight. He made the game slow down while everyone else looked rushed. When defenders tried to use length, he used angles. When they tried to pressure him, he used patience. When they tried to make him pass, he created the right play anyway. This was not luck. This was control. And by the time the series reached its biggest moments, Brunson was no longer trying to prove he belonged. He was proving everyone else had been late to understand him. That is the difference between a good player and a franchise player. A good player has great nights. A franchise player changes the feeling of an entire city. And that is exactly what Brunson did. He carried New York into a moment Knicks fans had waited generations to feel. The final buzzer did not just end a series. It ended an argument. The too small label collapsed. The not a 1A debate disappeared. The idea that Brunson could not lead a champion suddenly looked ridiculous, because there he was, not in theory, not in a debate segment, not in some fans' imagination. He was standing in the middle of the NBA world as the man who finished the job, the apology that shocked everyone. One of the wildest moments in this entire story came before the confetti even finished falling, because Draymond Green did something that almost nobody expected him to do. He apologized. Not in a quiet text message, not through some vague podcast explanation, not with one of those half apologies where a person says, if anyone was offended, no. Draymond looked Jalen Brunson in the face and admitted he was wrong. And that mattered more than people realize. Because this is Draymond Green we are talking about. This is not a player known for walking back bold opinion. This is not someone who usually hides from controversy. Draymond has built an entire second career around saying exactly what he thinks. He argues with players. He challenges analysts. He questions teams. He gives hard opinions. And most of the time, he stands on them with both feet. So when a man like that stops, looks at Brunson, and says, sorry, you know something serious has happened. You know, Brunson did not just have a good run. He became undeniable. That is the difference. A good player makes critics hesitate. An undeniable player makes critics apologize. And Brunson had reached that point for months, maybe even years. The conversation around him had been trapped inside the same box. People respected his skill, but they questioned his ceiling. They loved his toughness, but doubted his size. They admired his scoring, but wondered if that could survive the deepest rounds of the playoffs. Draymond was part of that conversation. He looked at Brunson and did not see the classic championship #1 option. He saw a smaller guard trying to do something history rarely allows. And honestly, that is why his apology landed so hard. Because Draymond was not just apologizing for one sentence. He was apologizing for the entire idea that Brunson's body type placed a limit on his destiny. He was admitting that what looked impossible on paper had become real in front of everyone. And the way he did it made the moment even more powerful. He did not wait for the perfect media cycle. He did not let the internet pressure him for days. He did not act like the take never happened. He owned it right there. That is rare in sports media because hot takes are easy. Accountability is hard. Every day people make predictions about players, coaches, teams, trades, legacies, and careers. They say someone is washed. They say someone cannot lead. They say someone is overrated. They say a team is fake. Then, when they are wrong, they just move to the next topic like nothing happened. Draymond did not do that. And whether you love him or not, that deserves respect. But here's the part that makes the moment even more interesting. Brunson did not need the apology. He had already won the argument. By the time Draymond said sorry, Brunson's game had already done the talking. The fourth quarters had spoken. The playoff wins had spoken. The pressure shots had spoken. The final stage had spoken. That apology was not what made Brunson valid. It was proof that everyone else was finally catching up. And you could feel that shift across the league. Suddenly, the conversation was not, can Jalen Brunson be that guy? It became, how did we miss this? How did so many people watch his footwork, his leadership, his shot making, his control, his composure, and still reduce the conversation to height? How did they see a player who never panicked and still questioned whether he could handle pressure? How did they see New York rally around him and still doubt whether he could lead? That is what made the apology feel bigger than Draymond. It represented the entire NBA community being forced to rewatch the tape, not just of the games, but of their own assumptions. And for Brunson, the coldest part was that he barely had to react. He did not celebrate the apology. He did not embarrass Draymond. He did not turn the moment into a personal victory speech. He simply stood there as the player who had already proven the point. That is power. Real power is not always loud. Sometimes real power is letting someone apologize while you know your work already answered every question. But not everybody handled being proven wrong the way Draymond did. Because while Draymond chose accountability, Becky Hammon's reaction created an entirely different firestorm. And that is where the story took another turn. Becky stood her ground. Becky Hammon had chances to walk it back. She had chances to soften the moment. She had chances to say Brunson proved her wrong and leave it there. But that is not what made this story explode. What made it explode was that Becky never fully gave the apology fans wanted. She gave Brunson credit. She admitted he was a great player. She made it clear her opinion came from basketball history, not personal hate. But she did not completely surrender the take. And to Knicks fans, that was gasoline on the fire. Because after everything Brunson had done, they did not want context. They wanted accountability. They wanted the person who said too small to say the words everyone was waiting for. I was wrong. But Becky did not make it that simple. She stood on the historical argument. She pointed to the past. She reminded people that small guards have rarely led championship teams as the clear number one. And from a pure basketball perspective, there was some logic there. But sports fans do not live inside spreadsheets. They live inside moments. And Brunson had just created the moment. That is why the old clip came back harder than ever. The internet grabbed those 3 words and turned them into the soundtrack of the entire revenge story. He too small. Then came the trophy. He too small. Then came the finals MVP. He too small. Then came New York celebrating like the city had waited a lifetime for this exact response. The phrase that was meant to limit Brunson became the phrase that made his victory feel even bigger. And Becky became the unwilling symbol of every doubter who looked at Brunson and saw what he could not be instead of what he was becoming. The Instagram live that revealed the truth. Just when people thought the story was over, McCall Bridges accidentally made it even better. Because Brunson had played the whole situation perfectly. He stayed quiet. He did not give emotional quotes. He did not turn the championship celebration into a personal revenge speech. He let the ring speak. He let the MVP speak. He let New York speak. But then Bridges went live, and suddenly, the curtain opened. The stream was chaotic, loose, hilarious, and exactly the kind of moment that happens when a team has just reached the top of the basketball world. But buried inside all that celebration was the detail everyone wanted to know. Did Brunson actually care about what Becky said? Did those words really stay with him? Was he secretly using that criticism as motivation the whole time? According to Bridges, yes. He made it clear that Brunson knew. He heard the comments. He remembered them. And even if he never admitted it publicly, those words pushed him. That changed the way fans looked at the entire playoff run. Now, every big shot had a new meaning. Every cold expression had a hidden fire behind it. Every silent interview felt even more powerful because Brunson was not ignoring the disrespect. He was storing it. He was converting it into discipline. And when Bridges said it out loud, fans finally got the plot twist. The quiet star was not unaffected. He was locked in. He just understood something most people forget. You do not have to respond immediately to win the argument. Sometimes the best response takes months. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes a finals MVP trophy sitting beside you while everyone else tries to explain how they got it wrong. That is what made Brunson's silence so dangerous. He was not avoiding the smoke. He was saving the answer for the scoreboard, the lesson behind the ring. When you strip away the drama, the clips, the hot takes, and the social media chaos, the lesson from Jalen Brunson's story is simple. Do not let other people's limits become your identity. That is the heart of it. Because Becky Hammon had her opinion, Draymond Green had his opinion. Fans had theirs, analysts had theirs. But none of those opinions could decide who Brunson was going to become. Only Brunson could do that. And he chose the hardest path. Not the loudest path. Not the angriest path. The disciplined path. He did not waste energy fighting every critic. He did not chase every headline. He did not turn disrespect into bitterness. He turned it into focus. That is what great competitors do. They listen without breaking. They absorb pressure without becoming reckless. They use doubt as fuel, but they never let it poison them. And that is why this story matters beyond basketball. Because everyone watching has been doubted before. Maybe someone said you were not talented enough, not strong enough, not smart enough, not ready, not built for the moment. Brunson's story reminds people that the answer does not always need to be a speech. Sometimes the answer is consistency. Sometimes the answer is patience. Sometimes the answer is showing up every day until the world has no choice but to change its mind. And for the NBA, this is a strategic lesson too. You cannot judge a leader only by measurement. Height matters, athleticism matters, history matters, but poise matters too. Decision-making matters, skill matters, heart matters, trust matters. And when a player has the respect of his locker room, the courage to take the biggest shots, and the discipline to stay calm while the world doubts him, that player is never small. So maybe this was never really a story about size. Maybe it was a story about vision. Some people saw Brunson's height and stopped there. The Knicks saw his heart, his work, his leadership, and his ability to survive pressure. That is why they believed. That is why New York followed him. And that is why this championship story feels bigger than basketball. Because the most powerful revenge is not humiliation, it is growth. It is peace. It is proving yourself without needing to destroy anyone else. It is winning, learning, and moving forward with your head high. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Becky Hammon owes Jalen Brunson a full apology? Press 1 if yes. Press 2 if you think she was just standing on basketball history. And tell me where you are watching from, because I want to see how far this NBA story has traveled. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like the video, share it with another basketball fan, and subscribe for more NBA drama, strategy, and stories that go deeper than the box score. Because in this league, the loudest stories are not always told by the loudest players. Sometimes the coldest message is the one delivered without saying a word.